Welcome to Viking Spotlight, a podcast about people, events, and projects in the North Canton City School District. I'm your host, Jeff Wendorf. Today we're talking with Missy Stertzbach, Hoover High School speech and debate coach in North Canton City Schools. Missy Stertzbach has worked in education for 28 years and is in her 30th year as a speech and debate coach, and 18 of those at Hoover High School. She's currently a reading specialist and English language arts lab teacher at the high school, and she also serves as an Ohio Speech and Debate Association Hall of Fame coach and 4-diamond coach with National Speech and Debate Association. Welcome to our Spotlight.
Thank you.
We're appreciative of you being here. I know it's a very busy time for you. We've got some exciting news coming up and events, so we'll run through our questions and get to know about speech and debate at Hoover High School here. So we call the program Speech and Debate, but it's really a very broad name for what happens at a speech and debate tournament and those events, because it can be broken down into specific competitions. And what are all the categories that are available?
Well, there are actually 13 different categories. So whenever we are recruiting students, I always like to tell them we have something to offer everybody, because we have categories that range from interpretation categories, which are like acting, more like kids who like to be in theater and that kind of thing, to categories that are hardcore debate, to categories that are more about having a message, having something important to say, and wanting to say that and get that message out there. So
interesting.
There's a little bit for everybody.
As adults, when you think of our kids, you think, okay, which category are they in? But let's start with debate. I think that there's 4 categories in debate, and could you tell us about each of them and what they might involve?
Right. One of the main categories in debate is called policy debate. We actually don't have that at Hoover right now, just because the students we had graduated. It is a category that takes a lot of intensity, and we didn't have anybody who wanted to do it this year. So right now, we don't have that. However, it is a debate category where they debate the same topic all year long. And it's intense in its research. I like to equate it to a mental chess game. So really, they're trying to figure out what argument could knock this argument down, and they kind of prepare for those arguments all year long. The next category is Lincoln Douglas debate, which is one debater versus another debater, and it's philosophical in nature. They're talking about things that ought to happen. It's just that this happens, that kind of thing. Then there's another paired debate event, which is 2 people versus 2 people, called public forum debate, and it's more in the nature of types of policy things, like, the government should be doing this because it benefits all people. Okay. Those kinds of things. And then the final debate category is actually congressional debate. We have some students right now who really are excelling in this area, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It runs like you would think the House of Representatives or the Senate runs. 30 students in a room, and they're debating legislation that students have written and presented. Oh,
okay. So their own policy updates and their own policy recommendations and so on.
And they use to learn parliamentary procedure, and they use all of those kinds of things. So
that's exciting, and there seems to be a lot of that in the news in recent years. And,
definitely.
And you watch some of the congressional hearings and those kind of things, and it's very interesting of that process. So it's great that our kids are learning that. So with public speaking and the other side of the debate thing, what about speaking and interpretation? And when you described that a little bit ago, it seemed like almost impromptu, or so is it impromptu or is it more of a interpretation?
We do have a couple of categories that are kind of impromptu. 2 categories. They're both extemporaneous speaking. We have international extemporaneous speaking and domestic extemporaneous speaking. And those are categories where students are dealing with answering a question that they're presented at the beginning of the tournament, and it's all surrounding politics.
Okay.
Again, we have one of the top-ranked students in the state in international extemp, and so this weekend at the state tournament, she will be answering questions like, what impact is the Russian-Ukraine conflict going to have on the world?
Wow.
And she'll have 30 minutes to prepare a speech answering that question. So both those two categories are kind of impromptu in nature. Nothing else is. Everything else is prepared. When we talk about the rhetoric or the public speaking events, the other two categories are original oratory and informative speaking, rather. And in both cases, the student is writing their speech. In informative, they're just informing you about something. We have a student this year who does one on coffee. And the first time I ever heard her practice, I learned that coffee is actually a fruit and not a bean. I'm sorry, I didn't know that, but
sounds like something was misnamed, right?
Right. So we learn things from them. In original oratory, that's really the category for the person who has something that they want to change about the world.
Okay.
We have a student this year doing his speech on how competition is good, and that giving out participation awards is not necessarily for the best for the individual or our society.
Interesting. Interesting comments. Yeah, that's neat. Good. Well, so you talked a little bit about those. Interpretation includes, and I'm going to read this, declamation, dramatic interpretation, humorous interpretation, duo interpretation, and program oral interpretation. What do those involve, and how do students choose cutting?
Well, all of those are basically playing characters. So in dramatic interpretation, most of our kids in dramatic are playing just one character, and they're telling that character's story in 10 minutes. In humorous interpretation, it's usually a snippet of a play, of a book, something like that that's humorous in nature, and they're playing many characters. Think Saturday Night Live. Right. Humorous interpretation students are doing mini Saturday Night Live skits every week. Program oral interpretation is literature. It's a combination of literature, prose, news stories, poetry, song lyrics, all around a central theme. And then duo interpretation is two people doing one of those. Okay. So and how do they choose a cutting? It can be challenging. I always say to kids, they'll come to me with an idea, and if I don't love the idea, I think that sometimes they get a little crushed. And I always say to them, we both have to love this idea for the magic to happen.
I see. Yeah.
And so it's hard. You try to find things that are, worthy of being, because everybody should always be striving to be a state champion or a national qualifier or whatever. Sure. So you want to find things that are worthy of that, but that speak to the student, that speak to their age, that, are appropriate, and that can be difficult. We have some kids doing some intense pieces this year, but those are also kids that are now going to the national tournament.
Right.
So
yeah, excellent. Very neat. So that's quite a different number of events. How do kids decide? Do they early on, say their freshman year, and they come in and they start to listen? What's the process for them to kind of land in their spot or in their areas?
Well, if I'm meeting a student for the first time, I always sit down with them and ask them one question. If I was to say you had the choice of acting, making a difference in the world, or talking about politics and government, which do you think is most you? And once they tell me that, then I can figure out if they need to go more the interpretation route, the debate route, or the public speaking route. Okay. So that really kind of narrows it down.
And then gets them in their lane, and then they...
Right. Yeah. And then within those areas, sometimes I say to them, hey, listen, I think that eventually you're going to be a great drama. But this year, for instance, this year we had 6 great dramas starting out, varsity kids. So I didn't let any freshmen go into drama because they would have been just spinning their wheels and going nowhere. I wanted them to be in something that they could grow in, learn in, and have success in, and know that they had a chance at qualifying to the state tournament and stuff like that. So sometimes that makes a difference.
Yeah. Good. I should have asked this first. About how many kids are in the speech and debate program at Hoover?
We've been as high as 70.
Wow.
We are a little lower this year. We're right around 50 right now, or for this season we were around 50. COVID had an impact. We were virtual for an entire year. I'm glad that we could be virtual, but it obviously wasn't as engaging or exciting for students. As we know, being in person is really important for students. And so we are building again.
Yeah, great.
But it did have an impact.
Yeah, I'm sure. How do you work with all the kids? I mean, you got 70. I know you have some helpers and some things and some volunteers, but that's a lot of kids to handle.
It is. I'm lucky to have a great team that I work with. Another teacher here at the high school, Jennifer Mannion, who teaches the teaching professions. Sorry, I couldn't think of it for a second. Teaching professions program is my right-hand woman. She helps me with a lot of paperwork, and she coaches our rhetoric events. So I have her helping. We have a new debate coach this year, Abby Henry. She coaches the debate events for me. And then I have two sort of volunteer but board-approved assistant coaches who are alumnus.
Okay.
Max Schroeder and Evan Lucky Ewing. And they're just a tremendous help, helping me coach all the rest of the speech categories. Right. Yeah. Plus, I'm really proud here at Hoover that I think we have created a bit of a legacy. Several years ago, I started utilizing our seniors as peer coaches for our freshmen, and it has really been successful. So a lot of times it's good for the seniors because, they'll come to me and they'll say, I can't get him to slow down. And I'll look at them and think, welcome to my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you see how it feels. But it has been good. It's good for the upperclassmen to have that experience. And it's really good for the new kids to feel like there's a gap being bridged between myself and them,
Right, sure.
So that they feel like they get into it, they're learning the ropes, but they're not feeling intimidated. So I do use that some too, this peer coaching, and it really seems to work out well.
And for those upperclassmen, there's no better way to learn something at a higher level than to teach it.
Exactly.
Yeah, great, fantastic. This year's been quite a year. You got a lot coming up, but can you tell us a little bit about your number of pre-qualifiers and qualifiers for the state tournament? And congratulations to them. And then, what's made this year special?
This year's been special, first of all, if I can tackle that first, because we've tied a record and set a record. So that's pretty exciting. We have our state tournament this weekend. And we have actually qualified 28 students to the state tournament, which is a tie for the most we've ever had here at Hoover. So that in itself is exciting. We also, in addition to that, we had pre-qualified 15 students before we even went to the district tournament. And students get to pre-qualify because they've competed at a really high level. They have to earn 4 bids at 4 different tournaments. And we had a record number this year. We've never had that many students qualified to the state tournament before we ever went to the district tournament. So that was outstanding.
That's great. Yeah. So they score well at more minimum of 4 tournaments, and then that gets them an automatic place in the districts and state tournament. That's
absolutely
great.
And then we qualified these additional students there. So this weekend will be 28 strong. It's at Worcester High School, and we're really looking forward to it. I'm really excited for the kids. Then beyond that, we then competed at our national qualifying tournament, and we qualified 7 students to the national tournament. And there's actually a chance that we will qualify another 1 or 2 at our Congressional Debate national qualifier. But we qualified 7, which is the most Hoover's ever had. The most we'd ever had before this was 4.
Yeah, that's awesome. So at a typical speech and debate tournament, we host one, and you go to others almost every weekend for a long time. It's a long season. But how many kids participate on a team? We have 50 to 70 kids on the team. How many participate in a typical tournament? Teams
in our area range from 4 to 5 kids up to the largest in the state, which is Perry. They happen to be in our district. Perry has a little over 100 on their team right now. But after them, it'll tell you how quickly things fall off. After Perry, I think there's only 3 other teams between ourselves and Perry in terms of size and participation. So generally a large team we're considered a large team, somewhere between 50 and 70. At a given tournament here in our area, our tournaments are large because we generally are bringing together schools from all over Akron and Canton together in one tournament. Our tournament we hosted this year at Hoover, we had 520 entries, and it was just over 600 students.
Wow.
Who competed, and we use all of the high school and all of the middle school.
If you're ever around the high school on a speech and debate tournament day, any high school, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it was.
So every student that goes for our team participates, correct? So it's not like you got, a bench. Everybody participates, and that's what's neat about it is everybody's going to compete.
Yeah, it is. It's really neat. That makes us a little bit different in that we can enter everybody until we get to districts, and then we can only enter our top 4.
Sure.
Which is why occasionally I have to say to students, hey, maybe it'll be a good idea for you to spend this year doing this event because they're going to have a greater opportunity to go farther into the season.
That's great. So it really is key to get some pre-qualifiers that you don't have to take to districts because they've already secured a seat at the state level. That's very strategic. That's excellent.
Well, and in fact, we have a category this year, program oral interpretation, which quite frankly, we have a long history of. It's, we, as coaches, as teachers, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses. One of my strengths that I know is coaching this particular event. So normally we only get to send 4 individuals to the district tournament. So we only have the possibility of sending 4 to the state tournament in any given event. But this year, we pre-qualified 5 students in that event. So we are one of the rare schools that's getting to send more than 4 in an event. So that's pretty exciting. And that particular group of students, they were really proud of themselves that they pulled together and did that. So
yeah, that's great. Well, and I'm in Rotary. Rotary's a big sponsor of Hoover Sports Speech and Debate, and I've had the opportunity to see some kids perform, and they come and do some presentations at the Rotary events. But is there a way for general public to view or to participate, or is there any posting of some of the students performing? And it's a little bit unique because it's not a very public event. Is there an opportunity for that, or is that not something that's done?
Well, it's funny that you should mention that because I have several parents who have, for a couple years, asked that we do some kind of spotlight night. At least let some of our upperclassmen perform their pieces. A lot of times their parents who come and judge still don't get to spend time seeing their students perform. And we were just kind of getting this rolling, and then COVID.
Of course.
So there is a possibility that we're going to host something like that again, kind of like a senior or junior-senior spotlight or a state qualifier spotlight, where we might have just a short evening where people can come and see them perform some of their pieces.
Yeah. And I assume the kids kind of keep their own electronic portfolio for colleges and so on to try to work, take it to the next level. That's cool.
We have one particular student this year who is pretty seriously looking at doing speech and debate in college. So, and we've had several kids go on, especially right now, we have several former debaters who are debating in college.
That's neat.
So
that's great. Well, you've had great success, established a great tradition at Hoover, and a great reputation for our speech and debate program. What sticks out in your mind as being the key? What's the it factor in your programs?
I think the it factor is the same thing it is for all of our programs at Hoover. It's our students. Yeah. We have such amazing students here at Hoover, and they influence each other. Like one of the, a lot of other coaches will ask me, how do you maintain a team of 55, 60 kids? And I say, I'd like to say it was some magical recruitment tool that I have, but it's not. It's my kids. They have a wonderful experience. They then bring their friends, their little brothers and sisters who bring their friends, come to our program. And that is what I think creates the amazing program we've had.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. Our kids make things happen, don't they?
They do.
What can our listeners do to help support or to participate or become more involved in Hoover Speech and Debate?
Well, we're going to be having some fundraisers for our national tournament because 7 national qualifiers. We're going to Louisville, Kentucky for a week. And that is going to be really expensive. Mm-hmm. So one thing they could do is keep an eye out for any of those events that are going to come around. We'll have a pancake breakfast at Chili's and some different things like that. And we appreciate any community support. I'm going to give a shout out to the Rotary because we always are appreciative of the Rotary. We have a wonderful relationship with them. And then in addition to that, like I always tell people, the best thing you can do is to remind your kids or your grandchildren or your nieces and nephews that speech and debate is a wonderful activity that is available in most schools in our area. Mm-hmm. A lot of times it's an activity that kids aren't really aware is there. And especially here at Hoover, we work well, we play well with others, I should say, because a lot of their practices can be individual. They can schedule them around other things. We have kids on our team that are, of course, in the theater, in the musical, in band, in orchestra. We have a lot of cross-country and track runners. We have tennis players, lacrosse players, softball players, volleyball players. I mean, we have a little bit of everything on our team. And so I always tell people the best thing you can do is to remind your young people, no matter what form that takes, your young people that speech and debate is just an incredible activity that they'll gain leadership through it. They'll get amazing time management skills are created through speech and debate. And they will learn how to just be present and present themselves in a way that's really important going forward in life.
Yeah, you see all the things, the amazing things that high school and really elementary kids do and all the things that they excel at. But the ones that are multiplied are the ones that speak well in public or with adults. And that really creates the wow factor for kids that are successful in many different ways. But if they can communicate well verbally, then presence, that is something that is just, I call it the wow factor, that they're able to really exude confidence, and it makes their message and their skills that much clearer. So great. Anything else you want to share with us about speech and debate?
No, I appreciate you having us here. Yeah. I love talking about my kids. So thank you for giving me a platform to talk about them more. Sure.
This has been a lot of fun. We tried this year, and I think we're into session 9 or 10, and 10. And it's easy to talk about Hoover kids, isn't it?
It
really is. Yeah. And so we love to shine a light on them, but we also have great staff, and the staff that's working with our kids is amazing, and we appreciate you and your leadership in speech and debate, and wish you well at the state tournament and the nationals, and we'll say go Vikings, right?
Right, go Vikes.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, and thank you for making an exceptional program. We appreciate it. Thanks to our listeners for joining us today to hear about our speech and debate program at Hoover High School. Next week, we'll be talking about an important annual event, the North Canton St. Baldrige event that fundraises for childhood cancer research. We have all of our buildings involved in that, and we'll have a contributor to talk about that program, and I think we're 3 or 4 years into that, and some great work and money being raised in our area for childhood cancer research. So thank you all for listening, and as usual, we'll talk to you next week, and go Vikings.